All right. Welcome everyone to our panel of HCDE faculty and fairly recent alumna here to talk about their experiences in higher education, mentorship from their journey to where they are now, and their kind of strategies and support systems to prepare and support students in their journey through higher education, and specifically a PhD program. My name is Kathleen Rascone. I'm the Director of Academic Services and here to meet with prospective students and current students about their courses, their academic journey, and help them get through their milestones and graduation. I'll pass it off to Charlotte for introductions.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's great to see so many people here. Again, you're welcome to turn on your cameras so we can take a look at you, but no pressure either. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Charlotte Lee. I'm a professor in human-centered design and engineering. I've been with the department since 2008, so I have a long history with the department and obviously love it, and so I've stayed. I've worked with many PhD students over the years and even worked with some PhD students before I came to University of Washington. So I have a long history of mentoring, but I also have a history of having been mentored myself as a PhD student and also seeker of a life journey. I can say more later, but maybe that's enough for now.
Great. Kenya?
Hi everyone, my name is Kenya Mejia. I just finished, I guess a year in 2023, finished my PhD in HCDE. And I'm currently an assistant professor in mechanical engineering at San Francisco State. So I'm definitely kind of transitioning into more of a larger like mentor role, but have lots and lots of experience being a mentee. So thank you all for being here.
Great. Cecilia?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Cecilia Aragon. I'm a professor here in HCDE, and I've been here since 2010. Also love it. This is a great community that combines, interest in technology and with an interest in social science and an interest in impact in the world. So this is a great place. It's a great place to be, and I think it's the most important. That's the most important part of technology. So I started out I got my PhD in computer science, so I came more from the hardcore engineering side, and then saw the light and became more human-centered. So I'm a passionate believer in mentoring. Yeah. Not only do I believe in it, but I've also studied it. I've done research on it, and it's really, really important and it's really a two-way street. Being a mentor and a mentee there's benefits on both sides, and it's really important to think of it that way. So I'm happy to talk more about that journey as we go on.
Great. Thank you. And lastly, Tyler.
Hi, I'm Tyler Fox. I'm Associate Teaching Professor here in HCDE. I've been here since 2016. I also work with PhD students, master students, and undergrads. I'm also a first generation student, so I have benefited a lot from mentorship myself and just figuring out my path through academia, which has been long and not a straight path, which we can talk about more.
Great. Thank you all for being here. So our first question to just kick things off are, what resources or connections have made a difference in your success? And anyone can answer first who'd like to.
Well, so I can start. So I know that when I was beginning my journey, a lot of people told me, oh, until you get tenure, don't volunteer to help anyone else. Just focus on your own career. And I ignored that because mentoring was so important to me. And since I'm Latina and I experienced a lot of discrimination in in my, in my journey to where I am today. And so I really, really wanted to help other people. And so I started, even as a grad student, I was mentoring, I was volunteering, doing a lot of mentoring, supporting underrepresented groups and helping to encourage people to go into STEM fields, to go into academia. And what I found was that by doing that, that is where I found my best mentors, because we met as equals and we all had interests in helping other people. And so when it came time for me to apply for faculty positions, it's the people I met as a volunteer that were the best mentors. I never went to somebody and said, will you be my mentor? That is the wrong way to, the wrong way to do it. And so that's what I would like to suggest, is that you follow your passion, follow what's important to you, and you'll find that you meet mentors along the way. So.
I can, oh, go ahead, Kenya.
Okay, I'll go next. Yeah, I think just thinking about how I got to getting a PhD, I think a lot of it, kind of echoing a little bit of what Cecilia said, is pursuing kind of my interest and asking questions. And I think that sometimes, I think I felt like there was one way to like become a PhD student, and that was like, you did research, you got good grades, and you got like all these experience, like technical experience. My background is mechanical engineering, and that's how you got into a PhD. Like Tyler said as well, my pathway was not straight at all. I actually decided after my undergraduate, I was like, I think I don't like engineering. I'm very burnt out. And then was able to go back and get my master's in engineering, and like through different kind of like following what I thought was right for me in the moment and asking people kind of their advice. And like Cecilia said, also like, it's usually your mentors are very like, you don't know, you don't have like a formal like, here's our contract on being a mentor mentee.
Right.
Although that does exist sometimes. But sometimes you just like, whoever you're like realizing like, okay, this person is on my side. They can be my cheerleader. They give me good advice. They believe in me. You know, people who you feel like can support you in that way is a lot of times a lot better than just, you know, like the faculty who is well known. It really is about you building the relationship with a person and you connecting and like trusting, right? Like there's a bit of trust that comes into that. And so I think especially, yeah, like also first generation Latina, I think someone knowing that someone believed in me as a person and isn't judging me by like my background. Those were things that were really important to me. And also having like my minority support group. So there's a lot of like organizations that have funding to help find you more like official like mentors, but also just like the people in those communities are also like not necessarily mentors in like the professional sense, but mentors in the sense of like they're going to get you to the next step because they believe in you.
So I want to plus one to both of those comments. I think I'll just add that some of my mentors maybe don't know that they're my mentors, right? There are people who have just reached out and shown kindness and support to me as humans, who we've then become friends and colleagues and so forth. And in fact, one person in particular was at a conference, took me to lunch with another PhD student just to get to know us and talk to us. I recently sent students to her for their research project for one of my classes. And she was, of course, as kind and generous to them as she has always been to me. And so I don't know, she thinks that she's my mentor, but she totally is, because I look up to her. And just remember that sometimes it's those little moments that instill with you in the confidence and feelings of self-worth that you pull on when you're in the depths of imposter syndrome, which we all experience. So yeah, and I think the resource, I was trying to think, Kathleen, the resources, for me, the resources have always been community, the people who I could turn to and just sort of bounce these, these ideas, the preposterous ideas off of like, oh, could I really go to a PhD program? And et cetera. So that's it.
Yeah, so I think I want to, plus one on everything that people are saying of that the resources, especially when you're early in your career and even later, the resources are really your community of like who are the people that you can talk to and have an honest conversation with. And then, you will have different conversations with different people. And this is true of your community and also people who may become your mentors. I think like zero of my mentors have ever approached me and said, I am your mentor and I'm going to mentor you, right? It doesn't happen that way. It is about connections. It's sort of like, I'm a nerd about this thing and I'm really curious about this, and you're a nerd about this thing too. And so let's be nerdy together and let's talk about it, right? And so it's sort of like a very particular kind of friendship or, at first of like, okay, let's just talk. And then usually for me anyway, a mentor is something that you realize retrospectively and kind of like Tyler hinted at this. It's sort of like, well, okay, after you've been having, these conversations for a couple of years every so often, you're like, okay, well, whether or not they know they're my mentor, they're mentoring me, and I sure appreciate it. And so these relationships are kind of like often unlabeled and specific things. So I have specific people I talk to about specific things, right? I have one person I might talk to about like, oh, I'm having trouble with, figuring out what to do with my career, or another person who's like, I have this particularly thorny problem about research, right? And so you kind of array this constellation of people around you, and then you get mentorship from all these different pockets.
Yeah, it's a great, all of that, of course, plus one. And you think about resources where it comes to, making advising appointments and funding from your undergraduate program or, special programs that you can sign up for or student organizations, but resources and connections that can be really impactful to understand graduate education and academic research. It comes from these really niche areas. And so you're trying to follow your passions and your interests. And then when you meet someone who shares that, follow up with them and have those conversations, because you just never know where that will lead or what opportunity that can present itself to be a mentor or recommender if you follow that string and you end up applying to a PhD program. Looking at our questions here, we were talking a lot about mentors, and I wonder if anyone would like to share more about, in our programs, we talk a lot about how not one mentor has everything, right? There is no unicorn mentor that has your life experience, your passions, your research topics, all of these things. And so I'm curious to hear from all of your journeys, like how did you manage your mentor map, basically? Like how did you seek out mentorship or support in areas that seem to be missing? Where did you find mentorship maybe with people who did share your identity or your journey versus someone who shares your research interests, your intellectual passions, and how do you just juggle all of that to maintain those connections? Because that's a lot of work too, if anyone would like to jump on that.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to say is this idea of a like mentor map, or like just you have different mentors for different aspects of your life. Like I didn't understand that or even know about that until I started this PhD in HCDE. And so like I'm trying to like put myself in y'all's shoes. Like I think right now I'm like, yes, I have like I actually have official mentors, because I'm like, I have a mentor in my department right now. I have a mentor that is supposed to be for like minority women in professorship positions. But before applying, I don't think I had that. And I think I was always really anxious because I think we do have this idea that there is supposed to be an official mentor that you have. But thinking about like who my recommenders were when I was looking to apply, I remember, so definitely people that I had done like a long-term research project with. So whether this was like undergraduate research or like for my master's thesis. I also had like this, it wasn't even, he wasn't officially faculty. He was just like, I think he was a graduate like teaching assistant or like teaching person, who like I had felt really seen by. And then by the time I was asking him for a letter recommendation, he already had like a professorship position. So I think I was like okay with like asking that, but like also understanding like where are your TAs at now? Like, can they write you a letter recommendation if they are like in more formal positions? But all of these felt like really like not your typical like letter recommenders. But I think it's honestly like, again, who you feel like you connected with, and who believes in you. And it's all also really scary because I did get some no's, right? Like people said, I don't know you, or I actually had one professor say yes, and he actually never submitted it. And that was awful. So I would like just don't be scared to ask people for recommendations, even though like, you know, like talking about this mentorship relationship, if you feel like you don't have a formal mentorship relationship, that's okay. Like I think professors' jobs and like anybody in academia, their jobs is to write recommendations. You will get no's, that's okay, but I think it's better to get a no than like not ask. So I think I like definitely went off on a tangent, but anyways, hopefully what I said was helpful in terms of finding your mentors and people to write your recommendations, which is really, you know, mentors are helping you get to the next step.
Yes, Kenya, we are always asked to write letters. And and sometimes, you know, if I say no to someone, it's because I don't think I can write them a good letter, right? And that's it's so and you know, being a good person is different from having a good letter written, right? So um that maybe is one way to think about who you ask. Also, when I write letters, I make an agreement. We have a karmic debt agreement that whoever I write a letter for has to commit to writing a letter in the future, because as I tell them that this is what makes the world go round. So when they can write a good one, that's what I say. That's what they agree to. But you know, Kenya, your comment made me think of some of the ways I help people think about letter writing and what I can do as a letter, and really thinking about, you know, getting them to tell me what they would like my letter, what my perspective can bring to their application, and really thinking about like, what do I know about you that I can say that's going to help your application? And so I like this. I'm not actually familiar with this mentor map, but it makes sense, right? As we have mentors about our personal lives, about our pursuits outside of academia, you know, whether that be like baking bread at home like I do, or making kombucha, or fixing my bicycle. There are different people in my life that I can go to and be like, how do I do this? Where do I even go? And the same is true for academia and research, I think. And so thinking about your mentor map and thinking about how you want to present yourself helps you kind of maybe hone in on people you can ask.
Can I respond to Tyler's comment? Okay. Yes. I remember, and I probably still will, like disliking when people ask me like, what do you want, what's good about you? Because I think I just had like such big imposter syndrome that I was like, I don't know if I would think nothing is good about me, but I was definitely like, I have a really hard time saying what's great about me. I'm just like really excited, and I know like this is something that I want to do. And I've seen that now that I've written letters of recommendations, I'm like, some people can write like really amazing things about themselves. And even reading that, I'm like, I don't know if I would have ever written that about myself even now. So I think just like, how do we handle that as well? Like knowing that some of us do have imposter syndrome, and how do we maybe get over that? Or like frame it in a way that's helpful for us to provide this useful information for um, our letter writers.
Yeah, these are all,
Oh, good. I was looking at you, Cecilia. I figured
oh,
you.
okay, I was just saying, these are all really good comments, and it's really, also, before you ask somebody to write a letter for you, it's really important to have spent some time outside of class. Just getting an A in a class does not make for a good letter if that's the only strength you have. I mean, and some faculty may say yes just because they want to help you. But if you get a letter of recommendation that just says that, oh, they got an A in my class. No, that's, you want to have letters that you only get 3 usually. So you want them all to stand out and to show who you are as a person and that you're passionate and you're committed. So you want to go the classes that you love, the faculty that you really feel connected with, spend time going to their office hours, do extra work, and don't just say, give me an extra assignment. That's making the professor do extra work. Go beyond what, really let them see that you are the sort of person who goes above and beyond. That's the key to getting a strong letter of recommendation. And and then, yes, as other people have said, +1 to all these good comments. Make sure that when you ask them in person, not over email, right? You ask them in person, and then you follow it up with an email that details all the strong points that you have, because they may have forgotten. And so you say, this is this, and then it's best to send a packet of your application so that they know what strong points to emphasize. For example, if you're applying for a program that wants, that's looking for independence, you want to say that in your request for the letter. Don't just, and make it easy for them to write you the kind of letter you want. That's really the key thing to do. So if you just say, write a letter for me, that is likely not to be as effective. So, yeah.
Right, really great comments. So I want to, build on that and +1 a lot of that, which is that, we're talking about letters of recommendation, we're talking about mentoring maps, and I think I want to hone on the spirit of it, which is sort of this building of relationships, right? That all of these things are, are relationship built, relationship driven, and then they help build more relationships. And when I say like these connections and relationships, the bar is kind of low, right? You want to be at the friendly acquaintance level. I have so many office hours where no students come, right? And it's just like, it's a pity. And then I have students who come to my office hours twice. And that's the difference sometimes between me going like, oh, I have another task when I have to write a letter of recommendation versus being like enthusiastic because I know the student, I know what their hopes and dreams are, I know what they're interested in, because they came to office hours twice and had a genuine conversation with me, right? So it wasn't like we had to be best friends, just that we had these honest conversations. I wasn't introduced to the concept of mentor maps until I was a professor. And professors need mentorship too. But I think the idea is sort of like being intentional about your network and thinking about like, who do you know? Who can you, build those lightweight connections with, become friendly acquaintances? Because it's always nicer if it's like somebody you've been in touch with and then they ask for help or guidance or connection. And it's not like they only come to you when they need something, right? To some extent, we understand that because, we're professionals, we're busy, we have work to do, we're trying to do things to improve the state of the world and human-centered design. But, it still feels better if somebody is like, interested in you as more than just a conduit or, an information source. So, be mindful of that. And then, even if you don't do an actual mentor map, to think about like, okay, what sorts of guidance would be helpful to me? How can I build and, keep warm those relationships in that area? I used to be like, like nobody, my colleagues will not believe this, but I used to be like incredibly shy and have all this, social anxiety and stuff. So I read all of these books on networking. I read like 5 books on networking, like the whole thing I read, and like how to make small talk and all these things. And one of the, pieces of advice that was really helpful to me was a book, which I actually didn't think overall the book was that great, but there was a great tidbit of information. And he's like, people think about like, oh, I made this connection and I don't want to bother them, so I'm not going to reach out. But the advice he gave was that these network connections are like a muscle. The more you use them, the stronger they become. All right. And so don't think like, oh, I don't want to bother anybody, so I'm not going to talk to them. But if you're not talking to them, you're not building that relationship. So that's something to keep in mind.
We have a question in the chat related to this. And, when I talk to prospective students about the application and higher ed, and I think interpreting this question, and I don't want to get this wrong, but in thinking about imposter syndrome and how do you find recommenders or mentors when you feel like your area's not where all the people are and what they're doing, and so you feel really limited in what you have access to. But I flip that a little bit and think about all of you when you pull applications and you're reading about students interested in programs and opportunities. How do you interpret letters or support from someone who feels like they're in a totally different field and it's not necessarily related to the work the student wants to do in this research program? And how do you interpret that? Because I think that's the concern here, is that you don't have the right support to show the readiness for what it is the student is trying to pursue.
I'm not reading letters to tell me that you're prepared to do necessarily research on that particular topic, right? I don't think anyone is prepared to do it until they get into it and start doing it, frankly. Because and everything's going to change once you start doing it, in my opinion, right? Your research should change as you learn more and learn how to do different research in different ways. So what I look for is more about, are you just prepared to commit to studying something for several years? And that can come in lots of different ways, right? I don't think there's one way for someone to tell that. We talk a lot about resilience. We talk a lot about understanding real world problems, and personal drive. Like resilience and personal drive are really important to getting through the slog of a PhD, in my opinion. And it's not all slog. Some of it's quite fun, but some of it sometimes is not fun, and you have to just continue to do it. And so I look for more of those things personally. I mean, certainly, somewhere you have to show intellectual capacity and merit along the way, but I don't necessarily look for the letters for that, right? I look for, that's what your research statement is for, and your personal statement, and obviously transcripts and projects. And you speaking to those kinds of things can help me understand if this is the kind of person who I think I will work well with, and understand how they think. The letters really, I'm hoping, are going to confirm what I'm seeing elsewhere about you. I don't know if that makes sense. And but Cecilia and Charlotte certainly have much more experience taking in PhD students than I do. So I'm curious what they.
Tyler, yeah, I think for Cecilia and Charlotte, kind of thinking about when you pull an application and you're reading letters, what skills you're looking for. How do you interpret what's a strong application? Because I think for students, there can be a lot of stress that they don't have recommenders who are part of the field they want to join. And that's how I'm interpreting this question in the chat. Ashika, and I don't know if you want to get on and maybe clarify, but I'm feeling like it's in a different realm.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm not looking for experience in my field, in particular in human-centered data science, because it's a pretty new field. What I'm looking for is somebody who's passionate about research and who's kind of a self-starter, because the people who do best in graduate school are really the ones that take on that run with new ideas, that don't just sit back and passively wait for a faculty member to give them an assignment. It's okay when you're a freshman, a first year college student, right? When you're still learning. And I do have people in my, I've had first year students in my directed research groups who really don't know what to do, and they just need that coaching. But what I found is I'll take a group of first year students and I'll give them a task, and the ones who really do well are the ones who go beyond it, who just don't do what I told them to do, but they do it, and they do it exceptionally well. Like, for example, I had one group where I had students doing coding of short text segments. What I mean by that is they actually assign a classification to the short text segment out of a set of categories. And this is a procedure called qualitative coding. And the one student who ended up doing the best was the one who just did a lot. They did the majority of the text. They just did a lot of those texts. And as a result, they gained a really tremendous insight into the research problem. And so they came up with ideas, which they then came to me and talked to me in office hours and in the directed research group. Would this be a good idea to explore? And so I helped them refine their idea, and then I had them put together a research project, and they actually ended up winning a contest at a top conference, competing against graduate students. So, often if you just show that enthusiasm and you go beyond, then the faculty member will be able to guide you, because knowledge is not what you need in research, because we're discovering new knowledge, right? You have to have that curiosity and that passion and that willingness to go beyond and to work hard, and don't just do the minimum. All right, that's really what it takes in research, because the minimum will never get you to discovering new knowledge.
Yeah, so I think I want to address the letter question and then talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. Regarding the letters, we have a whole packet, right? We have the essay, we have your resume, and then we have the letters. One of the things we're looking for in the letters is, does it back up what you say in the statement? And also, does it add something else? We have the record of what you've produced in your resume. One of the things we're looking for, to expand on what Cecilia said, is like, is this a student who has drive, has follow through, has creativity, is going to push forward? We have lots of students who apply who don't have a lot of like specific research experience. People are here to learn to be researchers, but not everybody's a good researcher, right? And so how do we assess that when somebody hasn't had the opportunity to do, real research, and yet they're applying to be research? So one of the things we look for in the entire packet, including the letters, are, does this person have curiosity, and then do they act on that curiosity, right? So we have a lot of essays where people say, I'm interested in X and Y, but then they didn't do anything about it, right? And it's like, okay, then we have another applicant who says like, oh, I'm interested about X and Y, and there's no resources at my university, so I formed a study group of students, and then we met every week and we discussed these things, right? And then I was like, oh, okay, that's better, right? And then the next one comes and says like, I had no resources at my university, so I formed a study group, and then we invited speakers to come, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, what evidence do we have that if you're going to take it, you're going to run with it? Because a PhD program is only a scaffold, right? We only provide a scaffold. It is your job to climb on it and climb up to the top, right? And so we want to see evidence of that you're going to do that, and that you have resilience, because we all have setbacks. Life happens. So are you going to push through and keep going? So that's about the learners. And I think one thing I just wanted to note about imposter syndrome is that, you know, the conversation around imposter syndrome has been changing a little bit. You know, we all have it. I've had it really bad sometimes. But at the same time, you know, acknowledging that there are social structures, there are institutional reasons why people feel that way. Prejudice is real, it still exists. Racism is real, it still exists. You know, I've lived my whole life as a Taiwanese American woman, and you know, I still have to work extra hard when I go to a new environment to prove that I know my stuff, which is annoying, but you know, I accept it. And so the good news is that, you know, while there's still plenty of very prejudiced people out there in the whole world, including academia, that there are also plenty of people who are not. And so you need to find those people. Almost all of my mentors, you know, I'm a bit older, so I had like a slightly different experience than some, but almost all of my mentors have been white men because of my topics in my particular topics are full of white men, right? And so it's like, okay, so I'll find mentors amongst white men, and I've done quite well, you know, with that. And then trying to, you know, move ahead and, you know, now I'm a full professor and now I can be the role model that I didn't have. And so I'm very happy about that.
One thing I wanted to add in terms of like what counts as like you being passionate and curious and going above and beyond. And I think especially for HCDE, right? If it relates to whatever your research topic is, and right, like you're gonna be doing this for like 5 years, so like you're probably already passionate about it. And I would just encourage you to like do some reflection and find ways that you're already doing things above and beyond. And it doesn't have to be the traditional, like I took a class and I did this project and took it way above and beyond. Maybe it is even like community organizing, like it's really dependent on what it is that you're passionate about. And so I can't speak to other programs, but I think I can speak for HCDE that like we're really looking for people who are interested in growing themselves, learning, and then making a difference in the world. And so I think just finding unique ways to you, right? Like how are you uniquely like curious and exploring and looking to make a difference in whatever space it is that you're interested in.
I think we're at a good stopping point with our structured questions. We're at 10:43. We've got a question in the chat, a little bit more about the application. So if everyone's okay, we'll switch over and see if we have questions from the audience. So one in the chat is, can you please let me know if applicants without a degree in STEM courses, but with experience in design will be accepted? I love this question. I get it a lot. I'll say we don't, you know, application wise, requirements wise, we have no requirement of the type of degree that you need to have. We have no requirement of the type of courses. I think we list some experience with math and stats because those are necessary to be a researcher, but there's no hard requirement of any specific courses or background because it depends on the type of research you want to do. We have students in our program who do more qualitative or quantitative research, and they require different skill sets and different interests, whether you're more focused in producing theory or research methods. So we keep it open. You do have to have a bachelor's degree by the time you matriculate, so not by the time you apply, but you can finish your degree through summer to be able to start a fall PhD program. And students can get a master's along the way. So no requirement that you have a master's degree. Does anyone else want to chime in or add anything in what they look for? Maybe related to their specific research, like Cecilia, I often use you as an example with data science that more likely you might look at, you know, quant GRE scores, even though they're optional, they're not required. And we tell students Provide the scores if they add value to your application, and think about the research you want to produce and what skills prepare you to do that, because that adds value and shines in your application.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's true. I'm a bit of an outlier in the program, but because I came from a pretty technical background and a lot of my research does continue to be about algorithms and, human-centered algorithms rather than studying, the impact of algorithms. Although I do have students who do purely qualitative research too. So what I like to look for is people with a background in computer science and math. But really, I've taken, as I said, I've taken people that have no STEM degrees and they've gone on to be very successful. So it's really, this is a very interdisciplinary department, which is what I love about it, is that you can come here with just about any background and you can be successful. And the main thing is that we are looking for how people interact with technology, writ large. And so that can mean I'm a machine learning researcher, I'm writing artificial intelligence algorithms, and I want to make sure that they are ethical and that they don't impact people negatively. Or it can be somebody who just says, I have no background in computer science, and I'm really interested in just studying the impact of, wearables. How do wearables impact, people with no technological background? How do societies understand the changes that are going on right now? So as long as it has to do with a study of technology or building technology, we are a great department for that. And if you are more of a computer science or engineering person, and you're looking for a department where you can build the tools you want, but you won't be judged on the standard metrics. You'll be judged on the impact your work can make in a positive way. Then we're a great place for you as well. Oh, and yes, please submit GRE scores. Especially, okay, so I'm gonna this is my pitch, all right? People have said, well, these standardized tests are not good because they discriminate against people of color. And I'll say, yes, they do, but they discriminate less than letters. Okay, speaking as somebody who I had teachers who gave me worse grades because I was a Latina, because I was a woman and a person of color. And the standardized tests, although they did discriminate against me, not as much. It's often the high scores that I got on the standardized test that gave me entree into programs that I wouldn't have gotten into otherwise. So please, take the test. If you don't do well, don't submit your scores, right? But if you do, submit them. And that is I do look for high GRE scores, because I have seen that there are often people whose grades are not that good because they had, faculty or teachers that didn't like them as much because of their skin color. And the standardized tests are biased, but less biased. So keep that in mind.
Anyone want to add to that topic otherwise we'll pivot to a new question. Okay. Something Tyler said about the slog of a PhD program. What does a slog look like versus non-slog?
Yeah, I liken a PhD to a long sports event. It's a marathon, right? It's a sort of or a long triathlon, which is more to my liking. But it's not a sprint, right? It's a long kind of thing. And research can go up and down, and sometimes you got to sit with hard problems for a while and really think about them to figure out how you want to address them, or how you want to figure out whatever it is you're researching, right? And so some of those things can be slogs. It's just because it takes time. Other things, there are a lot of hoops to jump through. We have prelims, we have generals, you have proposals, and depending on who you are and how you think and who your committee is and what your lived experience is, you can have vastly different experiences across those than your peers and colleagues. I don't know that the only way to do a PhD right is to finish and move on and do more stuff. And so it's by no means a comparison thing about what's a slog for some people versus what's a slog for other people. For me, I think the highlight of my experience was actually my generals, which many of my colleagues in my program really despised. But it was a moment where I was like, hey, I actually know something. Like someone asked me a bunch of hard questions and I had answers for them every time. And that, and I could correct people. I was like, no, actually, that's wrong. Sorry. Here's how I think of it. Right. And which is kind of fun to do when you're a PhD student talking to professors. So I just think that you're in it for a long time and knowing that it's not all going to be easy or smooth. And because as some, I think Charlotte mentioned, life happens. You have a whole living being outside of your PhD program that's going on, that those things affect your experience as well. Family matters, friend matters, the weather, right? Elections, all kinds of things temper our experience of the world. So that's what I meant. I don't know. I think the highlights, the celebrations along the way, taking time off, those are all important aspects of the PhD too.
Well said. Okay. Next question about evaluating the admissions packet holistically because of institutional barriers such as no disability accommodations. If you have a low GPA versus sharing your skills and experiences in the essays. One thing I do want to say about that is that you have this whole packet to share who you are as a professional. So you have all these pieces. You have pieces over several years of work, like a transcript. You have essays that can be of the moment, of things you're passionate about now and the future, and talking about experiences from the past. You have the option for recommenders who know you now or have known you previously. You have potentially the option to include like a test score, like a GRE, if you would like to. And so thinking about all those pieces, how they show the depth and the breadth of who you are as a professional. If you have one aspect of your application, maybe your GPA is lower than what you would like. We just need a 3.0 in order to be eligible to be admitted. And actually, you could have a 2.8 or higher and still be eligible to be admitted. So if you had a piece that's low, maybe low to you, maybe not low necessarily to us, just think about those other pieces that you have control over now to impact and improve, such as your essays, prepping your recommenders. Like there's a lot of things that you could spend your time to make your application the best you want it to be, and not harp so much on like a GPA that maybe you have no control over because it's your academic history and you might not be in classes anymore. And so you can't change it, but you can change aspects of your essay and working with your recommenders and things like that, or taking a GRE test. So I would say put your energy into the pieces that you can really control right now in this moment if you're preparing your application. But I want to see if anybody else has thoughts or tips or suggestions about reviewing holistically with the application. Good. Okay. We had a question for Cecilia. And Jade, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to ask your question live.
Yes, hi, my name is Jada. My name is Jada Mercy. You can call me Jada Mercy or Jada. Yes, so Cecilia, during your spiel, it was very inspirational, very motivating. And you said something about the importance of the impact that your graduate work can make. I kind of just got thinking like, okay, how do you measure the impact that your graduate work makes? Is it by like, okay, you're solving a certain problem, how many people can be affected by this problem? Or what other things would you think makes impact measurable or makes a big impact, I guess?
That is a great question. the issue with research, all right, is that you often don't know the impact that it's going to have right at the beginning. So, I mean, obviously, if you invented something and a million people are using it, wow, that's amazing. That's a big plus. But a lot of times, the impact of work isn't really discovered until many years later. I mean, so in our field, there's this Test of Time award that looks at the most impactful paper after 10 years. And very often it's not the one that won the best paper awards. So I would say what you want to do, and this is something you can get guidance from, your mentors, right? Is you're going to have a lot of areas you're passionate about. You want to go to somebody, who's knowledgeable about the field, and this can happen after you come to the program. And you say, I have these ideas. I have 3 ideas. Which one do you think would be the best to do? And often your professor, your major advisor, can say, oh yeah, these are all great ideas, but this one is the one that I think is really going to lead to something in 5 years. Because you want to choose not what's popular right now, but what will be popular in 5 years. And often it's people who've been working in the field longer who can give you advice on that. So I wouldn't stress about measuring impact unless you've already had a great success. But otherwise, just think about what you feel is important and what you believe. I mean, also, you may be right. I mean, I know that when I started out in math and I got really interested in computer science, and this was a long time ago. And I had a professor who told me, oh, computer science is just a fad. You should stay in math. And I thought, you know what? I don't think so, but I didn't dare say that because I was just a little student, right? A little undergrad. And I said, well, okay. But I decided to go into it. I said, well, I love it and I'm going to go into it. So if it is something you love, you should go into it. Remember, people may be wrong. It's the same way with data science. When I started out studying large amounts of data, this was pretty early on. And it was kind of a radical idea at the time. Nobody was studying that. And the advantage I had is that 5 years later, when I was on the job market, I had 5 years of experience in data science, and data science was hot. All right. So so follow I guess what I'm trying to say is follow what you believe is important because you may be right. Okay. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I just wanted to emphasize kind of what Celia was saying is like in the research when you write your statement, just like the motivation and background, like what's motivating you and what are you seeing in the world that is like making this a problem that you think is important, is something that you could talk about more so than the impact.
Okay, last question, 2 minutes left. And I'm going to probably pitch this to Charlotte or Cecilia with your years of experience with apps. How do you give tips when a student is writing about their research interests? How in depth, how narrow, how specific? I think students are trying to juggle. Maybe I don't know what my dissertation topic is. We also don't expect them to know, and but be able to communicate. I want to work with this person, and my research aligns. And then you receive that and say, yes, I get it. How does that work?
Yeah, I think I have 2 conflicting pieces of advice that you have to resolve yourself in your applications. I think one is that, remember that we're assessing fit, and you should also be assessing fit of your interest with our faculty, right? You could have the most amazing topic in the world, but if we don't have at least 2 faculty who can advise and help you with that, then it's gonna be tough, right? So when you're thinking about broad or narrow interests, you also want to be thinking about like, are my interests compatible with what the faculty are doing? So you don't want to be so narrow that it's like, I could only work with one specific faculty member. They might not have room for another student, right? So you need to be broad enough that you could work with a number of faculty because you're going to need a committee anyway, right? It takes a village to raise a PhD, so you need a committee. But at the same time, you don't want to be too vague, right? If you just speak in generalities of like, oh, I'm interested in human-centered design, I'm interested in making technology better for society. Like, yeah, so is everybody else. Right. So you need to be specific enough to say like, okay, this is where my interests are a little different and I'm capable of carving out a specific question, in this realm of values and interests. So in some ways, like the specificity is just a demonstration of your ability to analyze, right? And so these are like two things that you have to balance when you're writing your application of like being broad enough, but also being specific enough to show that you can be analytical.
Okay, so I really apologize. I have a meeting that I'm leading at 11, so I have to go. But thank you all very much for these great questions. Good luck with your future careers. Just by coming here, you're already ahead of the game. So you are awesome.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. And thank you to all of our panelists. Really appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable and talking about this really important topic of conveying your skills in the right way and communicating your needs and also finding people in your corner. It's really important. So thank you very much. Last thing I want to share, if anybody needs to sign off, that's okay. So this was one of 3 panels we have left before the application deadline. So on the 19th is our next panel. We're doing a research talk with Dr. Hasselkorn and Dr. David McDonald to talk about their research area. So it'll be very focused on the actual research that they're doing and how they're recruiting and working with future PhD students and current PhD students. And then the same thing the following day on the 20th. With Dr. Nadia Peak and our newest faculty member who will be full-time next year, Dr. Emily Zhang. And they also will get to speak about their research. So that's a really great opportunity to hear about what they're doing in the labs, currently in conferences and things right now. So if you're thinking about working with any of these people, I would definitely attend. They may not want to record their session, so keep that in mind. I have a few more minutes. I can be here if anybody has any follow-up questions about the application. But thanks so much for being
I
here.
have a question.
Yeah.
I was late. I was in a class, so I didn't join when